Welcome to Doc NYC's Spring Showcase. It's our mid-year celebration of films and series. My name is Karen McMullen. I'm a senior programmer of features and shorts, and we're really happy to be here with the director, Katie Walsh of Netflix Simone Biles Rising. It was a fantastic series. I'm sure if you've watched it, you've thought the same. I'm a big Biles fan, so I'm very excited to be here with Katie. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. So, just give us a little backstory. You have done documentaries on Simone before, and just let us know what made you think that we needed to have another follow up on our dear little Simone, and what differentiates what you covered in your first documentary from this one.
Yeah, well, the first time I filmed with her was leading up to the Tokyo Olympics. And, I think we expected it to go the way probably everyone else did, where she was going to, go to the Tokyo Olympics, win everything, and come home. And that obviously didn't happen. And it really, it set Simone on a journey to really work on her mental health and try and figure out exactly what led to that withdrawal and the twisties that she had in Tokyo. So when she decided to come back and make a run at the Paris Olympics, she came back as a different person and someone that had spent a lot of time working on herself. And then she was about to really test that and see if all of that work that she had put in to become, to sort of handle her stress and the many pressures that come with being Simone Biles at a Summer Olympics. And so it was really up to her whether she was wanting to also film that journey and have people along with her while she was trying to overcome, these past challenges that she had. So I said to her, I'm here if you want to do this, but you need to decide because this is your path and your journey, and there's a lot riding on it for you, and I want to make sure that you're doing what's best for you. So once she decided, we were all in.
Yeah, that's really great. And one of the things that comes through your series is the obvious comfort she has with you. She's very honest, vulnerable, and it's intimate. I think the thing I like mostly is you really do feel like you're spending time with her and getting to know her in a way you don't when she's a celebrity. You were this series opens with you being in the living room when she withdraws, at that crucial moment when she decides not to take place in the Tokyo Olympics. Can you talk about what it was like in that moment?
Gosh, it was so, we were on Tokyo time, so it was 4 a.m. in Houston. And uh, up until maybe a week before, the plan was for myself and my team to go to Tokyo and be there with her. And because of all the COVID restrictions, and they kind of piled on as we got closer to the games, it just became really clear that going there would have, no real benefit because we wouldn't be able to see her anywhere in the hotel, at the gym, like anywhere. So we pivoted and decided to go and be with her family because, up until that moment, her mom and dad had been at every gymnastics competition she'd ever competed in her whole life. So it was a really big deal for them not to be there, both for her and for them. And so we thought, being with them was as intimate as you could be in that moment. And we showed up that morning, it's 4 a.m. We're having mimosas and muffins, and everyone's very celebratory, thinking we're about to see this amazing, performance by Simone and her teammates. And it just took a really quick turn. And it was the first event of the competition, and Simone was the first up. So it was right off the bat. And we didn't no one knew what was going on. Like, we didn't have a heads up. We didn't know that she was having this issue within the last 24 hours. She wasn't talking about it. She was trying to sort of work it through on her own. So it was a surprise for everybody. And we watched Simone walk off the floor, which is very unusual at the Olympics, and all of a sudden the landline rings in her house, and her mom, it's Simone calling to speak to her mom. And she knew what she had to do in that moment in order to protect herself. But I think she needed to hear her mom say it's okay. And to so much credit, Nellie immediately was like, like, no, Simone, you need to put yourself first. It's going to be okay. They're going to be okay without you. And I mean, that just speaks volumes to who Nellie is as a person and a mother, because she's trying to process what's going on too. And she just immediately knew exactly what Simone needed in that moment. And it gave Simone that extra sort of, ability, extra strength to go out there and do what was a really, really difficult decision, but one that she had to make. So just being there in the room and quietly observing what was going on was it was really emotional for everyone involved, and I'm just grateful that they let us be there.
Yeah, it was wonderful and also so brief, almost kind of matter of fact, just like
Yeah,
what can't do it, that's fine, do what you have to do.
yeah.
So moving to me that moment. Um, and it also helps see where she gets her strength from if she's based and grounded with people who have so much care for her. It's really lovely. Another thing that really resonated about this film was the fact, or this documentary, is the fact that you were able to get into the intimacy. Obviously, they're very close knit. Um, the warmth with her husband, the kind of playfulness, intimacy they have, the sibling rivalry, or the big sister little sister dynamic with Adria. It's really lovely. How did you approach her as a subject? She's so famous, but you really got into her as a person. Talk about that, please.
Well, I think that is the thing, right? Yes, she's very famous. She is this amazing human who you can't relate to on a gymnastics floor because nobody can do what she can do. But she's still a person.
Yeah.
And, when you sort of peel back those layers and you just meet someone there, like just who they are, and you try to get to know them and their heart and who they are as a person, well before they were the best gymnast ever to be, put on this planet, or whatever their, accolade is. And so I just approach it like that, and I got to know her family. I saw the tight knit family she has. It reminded me of my family. We would connect on that. I just try to always put the athlete or the person and our subject first and keep that as my hierarchy. Make sure that we're always thinking about their feelings and what they need in those moments, and being part of the system. And like, there's a little ecosystem around Simone, right? And we became part of that ecosystem, but always keeping the order of things. And it's her mental health and wellness first, and everything else kind of organized itself underneath that. And I think that by doing that, then she felt comfortable and safe in that space. And we kept a really small team. We kept a very consistent team, so that she knew, it was always the same people, it was always the same faces. And there's comfort in that, and then you build an actual relationship that is, it's genuine. It's not just something you're doing in that moment in order to have a good interview. It's a real relationship, and it's not just me. It's our director of photography, Jessica, is our audio person, Ryan. Like, we all were part of that world and got to know her and her whole family on such an intimate level that, I think it allowed for that trust to just kind of naturally build and become something that could help support her within the film, and just within her, her year competing.
And speaking of your team, it was largely women.
Mhm.
Can you talk about that choice of yours to build a all female team?
Yeah, I started making a conscious decision to really make sure that the team on projects that I work on is either primarily female or all female. Right when I started covering the survivors of the Larry Nasser case, I just felt like creating a space for the women to share their stories would feel and be safer of a space if it was all women. Um, and that's just been something that's continued over the last 6 or 7 years. And it's almost, in a way it's conscious, and I try to always seek that out. But also now we've built this great rapport with so many women filmmakers that it's become natural. I was just on a shoot last month, and someone came up and commented to me about how they felt it was so unusual to see so many women, because we had our AC was a woman, our director of photography was a woman, we actually were all women. And it was the first time I realized I didn't even think about it. It was just people I was hiring who were great at their job. And sometimes you have to really work a little bit to find that at first, because you're so used to hiring the same people and people that you know and trust, and sometimes then the faces repeat. But I make a real effort to make sure that my team is diverse in many different ways and in many different experiences. And I think that includes people on the team who I've worked with before, but also making space for people I haven't worked with, so that I can make room for people to come in who maybe have different perspectives or different past experiences that can help build to the story that we're telling. So that was the case in Simone, and that's just the case across the board for me.
It must have gone a long way towards creating a safe spot for Simone when she was recounting some of the more difficult aspects of her career, especially the sexual abuse with the medic, the Olympic medic. Can you talk about? And I just really appreciate the delicacy and the care you used for telling such a story. Can you talk about your approach to covering that?
Yeah, yeah. So Um, I felt that the story around Larry Nasser had been told many times in the past, including by myself. And I wanted to make sure in this film that we weren't just telling the story of Larry Nasser and USA Gymnastics in the past, but we were looking through the lens of Simone's experience and how this impacted her and how it's part of her story. Um, and has helped and led her to where she is today, both from what she's learned as becoming a survivor, but also as becoming an advocate for survivors. So I tried to really frame it through the lens of Simone's personal experience, and that helped focus it, so that you're not trying to tackle this big broad story, but you're telling it through the eyes of Simone and her personal experience. So that was really important to me. And then, as far as, we were very conscious about when we spoke about various subject matters that were really difficult for Simone to speak about. We had the benefit of having a whole year to film with her. So we were there for her preseason, and then we were there for her competition season. So the heavy, difficult conversations took place in the preseason, where she had a little more space. I would work with her team to make sure that if she needed to have a therapy appointment, either right before or right after, in and around, that we were coordinating with those appointments. That way, she was just fully supported throughout the whole process. And I think that, being able to do that and not trying to, we didn't have to like try to shove all these big conversations into a window where then she's also trying to go out and compete and, be, because then you want to be a bit compartmentalized and like very much focused on what you're doing. But so we try to really find the balance and organize our interviews in a way that was most supportive for her.
Mhm. I feel that, she's such a trailblazer in so many ways, but one of the ways, now everyone's talking about self care, right? And taking care of themselves. And she was one of the first to step out, I feel, on such a grand stage and say, I can't. I need to pause, and we see this as a comeback story, but it really was just a pause. Like, I'm just taking a minute. She didn't really quit, right? Can you talk about, her courage and her, self possession that allowed her to get to that space?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about all that Simone has gone through, and what something we wanted to do in the film was really show all the building blocks that led to the person she is today. It just makes what she does on the competition floor so much more impressive. And she needed to to find the sort of like her inner voice. And I think the support of her family has always been just the way we were talking about her mom Nellie before. They've always supported her to be exactly who she is, which isn't something that is always common in gymnastics. In a way, you have to be sort of like a little robot out there, and you don't necessarily bring in your own personality. But Simone's never been that way, and she's always been exactly who she is. And it's so impressive to me that who she is, when she's in front of a camera, is it who she is when she's behind the camera. And I think that ability to feel confident in her voice and in knowing exactly who she is was what allowed her in these moments where her mental health is really challenged to like find ownership in in how she was feeling, and be okay with that. It certainly wasn't easy though, and I know she really, she suffered a lot in the sort of like following days and weeks and months after Tokyo, trying to come to terms with what had happened. And then working through all of those mental health challenges, she was able to really come back so much stronger and do what she could, what she was able to do in Paris.
Resilience is a theme in her life and in her work, and reflected in the title that you chose, Simone Biles Rising. Can you talk about the use of the quote from a Maya Angelou poem, her tattoo, and the episode titles as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Amazingly, that title was it came so early and so easily. It just had to be. It was such a natural fit for Simone, for her story. She got that tattoo a couple years ago, and I remember when she showed it to me, and I was like, gosh, that's exactly what she's doing right now. She's rising above. And that's what she has done over her career in so many different experiences. I mean, she was a child in the foster care system. She was able to rise beyond that. She was a survivor in the Larry Nassar, abuse scandal. She has risen beyond that. She's had all these mental health challenges on the most public stage possible. She's risen beyond those. And it's just so fitting to her life and the trajectory of her life. So yeah, we wanted to bring that in and really give some space for that. I mean, there's no better person to bring words to any sort of poetic moment than Dr. Maya Angelou. So, we wanted to have the titles of each episode really reflect different verses in the poem, and we looked to Simone. I mean, she has that first permanently tattooed on her body, so it obviously means something important to her, and it just felt like a real natural connection between her real life and the film, and just the beautiful poetry of what she was attempting to do last year.
Nice. So just thinking back on your time with Simone, what about uncovering her story was the most exciting to you?
Gosh, I mean, it is such a privilege to be alongside someone who is of her caliber in an athletic space, and to witness what she is doing that close up. It's just not. I've worked in sports television in various forms for the last 20 plus years, and it's just its own unique experience. And I've always admired Simone and what she has done, athletically, and to be there with her and watch her go through it, and also to have a little bit of a window into what's really going on. Like, she had that injury where she hurt her calf in the very beginning of the Olympics. We knew that she was battling that, but nobody else did. And it wasn't until the film came out after that you actually kind of saw how serious it was and how stressful that moment was. So we were kind of with her, and we knew a little bit closer what she was going through in those moments. So to be on that side of it and see how she managed all the little challenges that happen within the much bigger challenge of trying to succeed at the Olympic Games. It's so impressive what she does. And yeah, I honestly just felt like it was such a privilege to be able to be there and just witness it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what do you want us to most take away from the documentary and from this knowing of Simone?
I think that if you can walk away finding a connection to Simone and understanding that, despite all of her superhuman abilities, she is a normal human being with real feelings and real emotions and real, sensitivities and insecurities. I think it's a good thing to remember, especially right now in life where people seem to be so divided, and there's this, social media component where everyone decides that they can just type their judgment and pass it on as if it doesn't have an impact on somebody. And I think it's just a good opportunity for us all to remember that we are much more similar than we are different, and that everyone has feelings. And even if you are the greatest gymnast on the face of this earth, you're still a human being first. And if we can approach everyone that we encounter in our lives and remember that we're all human beings first, I think that would be probably an improvement in what's going on right now.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Um, so I started my career in editing, and I know there's tons of stuff that gets left on the floor. And this documentary was so well balanced. You know, the sports footage and the personal, you know, the speaking and the talking heads and all that, and the kind of light moments. But I'm just wondering if there are any fun moments that got left in the cutting room floor that you could share with us.
Oh gosh. So early on in filming, we were, Simone was doing a speaking engagement with her friends and former Olympians, Ali Raisman and Lori Hernandez. And we filmed this really fun scene of them getting ready in the bathroom, Simone and Ali, and they're laughing and giggling. And it was just a nice light moment where you got to see them as friends more than teammates. And then afterwards, Simone, Ali, and Lori all ordered room service and they were hanging out. And we have a little of it in the film, but it was a very long conversation, just friends, girlfriends hanging out, having room service. And it was fun. I would love to, we could do a whole behind the scenes with just, they're so funny together. And there were lots of little moments. So yeah, maybe I would have put more of that in if I could, or if I had another couple minutes in there.
Yeah, I thought one of the things that was heartwarming for me throughout the film was the relationship that she has with her teammates. And she says several times, I don't think I could have gotten through it without, you know, their support. And that's very touching to me that they are not, they don't seem to be in competition with each other. Um, and, you know, it's just a very unique aspect of these world-class athletes, of which
Yeah.
a lot of time with. So, talk about the Paris Olympics. What was it like being surrounded by so many of these Olympians and just being out there in general?
Oh gosh, I mean, we we were so close. We're right around the perimeter of the floor. We could hear what was going on. We were able to see not just Simone, but all of her teammates who we had, sort of also been following and gotten to know over the course of the year. And it's such a big moment in their lives. I mean, you think about it, when you start gymnastics, you're not even a kid, you're a baby, you're a toddler. And it's this dream that floats out there, go to the Olympics, right? And here we are, having kind of spent the year with Simone and many other young women who have dedicated their whole life to that dream, and to get to see them actually realize it was really awesome. Simone obviously has had this Olympic experience before in various forms, so she comes at it from a different place. She's sort of like the all-knowing person who has had these many experiences, and can pass on advice. But then you had someone like Hesley Rivera, who was her very first Olympics. She's 16. She's just kind of there, and she makes it, and she gets to go and have this amazing experience, not only at the Olympics but alongside Simone, who she's looked up to her whole life. So to be able to see so many, young women, both from Team USA and all the other countries that were there, realize those dreams and be up close and personal to see what that's really like is, again, it's really just a privilege. I feel so lucky to be able to be there. It's certainly not an experience. I was an athlete, but not anywhere near the caliber. So to be able to go to the Olympics, in this role, for me is really cool.
Hmm. Is there a difference between Simone, you know, at home in with her husband and her family, and Simone right before she goes on to the mat? Can you talk about any you know,
Yeah.
hours that she has to drop into?
I mean, for sure, there's a difference in the sense that those scenarios are very different, right? And it's a really stressful, intense, you have to be so focused. It's a dangerous sport. The skills that Simone does are particularly dangerous. So you can't be totally light and carefree when you're doing those types of skills. So she does get very focused, very in the moment. But there's always the glimmer of Simone wherever she is. So, Simone off of the gymnastics mat and away from competition is really fun and light, and she jokes a lot. She likes to keep it light. and she's just very fun to be around. And you see her on the floor, and yes, she's definitely, like you said, like much more like, in the moment, focused. But then she'll smile and she'll laugh and she'll joke with her friends, and it comes out still. So, and that's something I was always so impressed with Simone, was her ability to be completely herself in all these different environments. I think it's really hard to do, especially when you are a young 20 something who, has like a big following on social media and a lot of people paying attention to you. And to be kind of true to who you are in all these different places, and who's been in the public eye for so many years, is not easy. But she really, she is the same person in all these different environments, sometimes maybe a little more serious, but that's also kind of true and authentic to what she needs to be in those moments. And it's just something that I think, is another superpower of hers, to be able to be herself. And it's also how people relate to her that, again, can't relate to those superhuman skills on the gym, but you can, she's fun and lighthearted, and you can find the human being in there. And, that's what we wanted to bring out in this film.
Yeah, and which you did in a very excellent way. How personally, since you've been filming her for so many years, how has your perception of Simone shifted?
I have, been lucky to watch her really grow up in a way, because when I started filming with her, she was like a late teen, maybe early 20s. And in the years that we've been with her, she's met her husband, she's gotten married. She's done a lot of like a lot of living outside of the gym. And I've seen how that has helped her in the gym. So, finding that balance, finding who she is in other roles, like as a friend or as a daughter, as a wife, it's allowed her to be truly herself also in the gym. And yeah, it's just nice to see her be able to, find those other parts, to tap into those other parts of herself. When you're in gymnastics and a sport that you've trained in your whole life, it defines you naturally, right? But she's also defining herself in other ways.
That's great. Well, I envy your closeness with this iconic woman who is still, she's not even 30 yet, and she's already such, such an icon in the sports world, and as a role model for young women and athletes in general. I know you volunteered to be your babysitter. Should
Always, I'm available.
I think it's wonderful, and I'd just like to thank you again for delivering such an intimate and authentic piece of such a beautiful young woman.
Thank you so much. And thank you for saying all that about the film, and having me on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Katie. And that's all our time that we have for today. I thank you all for watching, and please continue watching Doc NYC Spring Showcase. We have series and talks on until June 13th. And please keep watching Simone Biles Rising on Netflix.